All right, today we're going to be looking at head-to-head comparisons when we're talking about voting. Now, what we've seen so far, the plurality winner of a vote can have more votes against the winner than there actually are for the candidate. It's kind of a problem there when you have maybe 8 votes for, but 18 votes against the winner, and it's just the way it works out. We've seen that with the Borda score method. Borda is very easy to manipulate because you've got the low-ranking votes as well as the low-preference votes would add a lot of score, and you can move your points around to really kind of alter the scores if you have a larger number of candidates. And again, the Borda winner might not even have any first place votes, and that wouldn't even make it to plurality or the runoff method for that. So do we have any improvements? Today's method is really like the preferred method amongst like voting theorists or economists or mathematicians. And it's known as the Condorcet method, put together by written initially in the French Revolution by the Marquis de Condorcet. Looking at just different voting theory, different voting methods. This one is kind of the preferred method amongst mathematicians because it's kind of like a super runoff. We're going to be comparing everybody against everybody else. So let's see this in action. And we're going to look at 3 different candidates here. So we have our preference table. We're comparing Joe Biden, Joe Jorgensen, and Donald Trump in this proposed election. What we're going to do is we're going to look at all of the head-to-head matchups. We're going to do a runoff between each pair. Now we have 3 candidates here. And so we need to look at Biden versus Jorgensen, Biden versus Trump, and Jorgensen versus Trump. So we've got 3 different matchups. If you're familiar with combinatorics, this would be a combination. If we have 5 different candidates, we would have 5 choose 2 number of runoffs that we would need to compute. So let's go through, see what happens. First off, we're going to compare Biden and Jorgensen. Essentially, we're going to be doing a runoff between just those 2. So I'm going to forget about Trump for a moment. Now, Biden Jorgensen, we're going to look at the higher rank. First column, Biden is ranked 1, Jorgensen is ranked 2. Biden gets that 1 vote. The second column, Jorgensen is ranked 1, Biden is ranked 2. Jorgensen gets those 2 votes. Next column, Biden is ranked 2, Jorgensen is ranked 3. So Biden is higher ranked, Biden gets those votes. And our final column. So what we see here is that Biden gets 2 total votes and Jorgensen gets 3 total votes. Between just Biden and Jorgensen, Jorgensen is preferred. We're going to go and we're going to compare Biden versus Trump now. So we're going to forget about Joe Jorgensen and go Biden versus Trump. So I'm going to compare the relative rankings between Biden and Trump. Biden gets the first column, Biden receives votes from the second column, and Trump receives votes from the final 2 columns. So what we have here is Biden has 3 votes, Trump has 2 votes. Biden would be the winner between Biden and Trump. Now we're also going to compare that final pairing, which would be Jorgensen and Trump. So for a moment, we're going to forget about Biden, and we're going to go and compare Jorgensen versus Trump. So each column, we've got Jorgensen wins the first, Jorgensen wins the second, Trump wins the final 2. What we have here is Jorgensen receives 3 votes to Biden's 2 votes. But Jorgensen is the runoff winner between those 2, looking only at that pair. Excuse me. So what we see here is we have compared everybody in head-to-head matchups, one-on-one. Looking at that, Jorgensen is preferred over Biden, and Jorgensen is also preferred over Trump. In this case, we would consider Jorgensen to be our Condorcet winner. So working through the Condorcet method, we're going to compare each pair of candidates in head-to-head or one-on-one matchups. So we're going to go through, look at all the different combinations. We're going to look for the candidate that beats all others in one-on-one pairings. Any candidate, or the candidate that always wins or wins every single pairing is our Condorcet winner. Now what that means is a winner can never lose. As soon as the candidate loses, they're out. They cannot be. However, we must check all possible combinations to show that our winner actually beats all others. So, looking at all the different matchups, the head-to-head pairings, and then the winner is the one that beats all other options. Let's see this with a larger example. So here, the Board of Education is deciding upon the principal's salary for the next school year. Not actual numbers, so anybody out there looking from YouTube land, our principal does not make this much money. We'll really kind of recruit more administrators or more teachers at that point, but here we are. So here we have this preference table. We have 5 different options. For convenience, I've labeled them A, B, C, D, and E. What we're going to do is we're going to look at all one-on-one matchups between candidates. So I've started this off. We need to compare option A versus each of the other 4. So A versus B, A versus C, A versus D, and A versus E. We're going to need to compare B versus the others. Now we've already done B versus A. So we're going to also compare B versus C, B versus D, and B versus E. So I set this up and I try to keep myself organized so I can keep track of which candidate is faced the others. So A is facing everybody. We've got B facing the other 4. We've got C is now going to go versus D, and C is going to go against E. And lastly, the last matchup, we've got D versus E. So 5 total candidates. We have 10 total options. Notice that B competes in 5 pairings, C competes in 5 pairings, D competes against all 5, and E competes in actually all 4. So you have candidate against 4 others. So we're going to look at these matchups. I'm going to start looking just at A versus B and see what happens. So we are comparing A versus B. Go through, highlight this. So A versus B, I'm going to look for the higher ranking between those options. So A receives 4 votes. B receives 5 votes. Between those two, B is our one-on-one winner, our head-to-head matchup winner. We're going to compare now A versus C. So I'm going to do A versus C. So A versus C, I'm going to look at the comparison between those. Again, we can see that A receives 4 votes. Option C receives 5 votes. So C is the winner between A and C. We're going to look at the winner between A and D. So we go through and we look at all of those head-to-head matchups. A versus D. And A again loses. We've got 4 to 5. And lastly, we'll take a look at A versus E. A versus E. Ooh, A finally wins something. So we've got 6 to 3. Now, clearly, A is not going to be our Condorcet winner. As soon as a candidate loses one match, they are out. They cannot win. Do we actually need to go through and check all 4 of those possible elections? The answer is no. Well, not necessarily. So we realize that at the start, A is out. Since B wins, what I'm going to suggest is we follow the winner. Since we see that A loses to B, B wins a match. I'm going to check on B next. So what I could do is I can actually skip over a number of different options. As soon as A loses, we know that A is out. We can check something else. So my recommendation is follow the winner. And we'll see how this plays. So I'm going to move to my next column. I'm going to go over to B versus C. A, I'm going to use that for now. So we're going to look at B versus C. Comparing that, we got B, C, C, C. So we have 4 votes to 5 votes. C's our winner. Now with that, I'm not going to check those last 2, B versus D or B versus E, right now. I'm going to follow the winner. I'm going to check C against the others. So let's check C versus D. So we're going to check C versus D. And we've got C, 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 D. All right, so that is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 to 1. C's our winner there. I'm going to follow the winner. So C beats D. That means D's out. I'm going to check C versus E now. C versus E. Got C, 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 and E. Again, 8 to 1. And C wins that. Ooh, look at what just happened now. C beats A. C beats B. C beats D. And C beats E. C has beat all other contenders in one-on-one matchups. C, option C, is our Condorcet winner because C has beat all others. We need to make certain that our winning candidate beats all other options in these one-on-one matchups. Try it out.